Folks, and welcome to the Sci-Fi Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Urshan, and this week we're going to take a very special look back at Star Trek, the original series. And we're going to count down what I feel is the top 10 best episodes of the original series. In my opinion, of course, you guys might feel differently, but I'm going to give it the old try anyway. Uh, I also wanted to show off this awesome pic from the Boston Comic Con 2016. Check that out. William Shatner, aka James Tiberius Kirk, captain of the USS Enterprise. Nice, huh? Not too bad. Alright, folks, so let's get into it. And I'm going to start off as I usually like to do, and that's with a few honorable mentions. First up is the Squire of Gothos. I love this episode because I really enjoy the villain. I love his character. He's like this crazy, whacked out Liberace Joker type character. But he's got godlike power, and but he's got a childlike sense of mischief and childlike intellect, and he uses that sense of mischief against the crew of the Enterprise, of course. And it's funny when the parents find out about it, they take his powers away, and it's like a parent taking away a kid's toys, and he's like, "I just wanted to play." Next up is The Trouble with Tribbles. Another classic episode that everybody loves because it's really comical. It's a lot of fun, and then, it's Star Trek's a very serious science fiction show, and they just kind of took a break from that with this comedic episode where Uhura gets sold this like animal type alien, this big fluffy fur ball thing, and she takes it to the Enterprise, and it has all kinds of babies, and the next thing you know, there's like 3,000 of these tribbles all over the Enterprise, and Captain Kirk's not too happy about it. So there you have Trouble with Tribbles. Next up is Charlie X, another great episode, where this young boy is beamed down to the Enterprise basically because his family can't deal with him. He's this kid with, like, 17-year-old kid with crazy godlike powers, but at the same time, he doesn't know how to talk to people. He doesn't know how to deal with people, to deal with women. He doesn't know how to talk and converse and, have relationships with people. He has like a real childlike innocence about him. So that's interesting to see how Captain Kirk tells him how, because he doesn't know how to behave because he kind of harasses Captain Kirk's yeoman, Janice Rand. Kind of makes some inappropriate comments and gestures, and Kirk's got to smack some sense in him, and he becomes like a father figure trying to tell him how to behave, how to learn manners. And that's the interesting part of it. I really enjoy that. Next up is the Doomsday Machine. Another great episode where the Enterprise is beamed down to this ship that almost gets destroyed by this giant doomsday device, which can destroy planets, much like we've seen in another famous science fiction series. But they beam down to the ship and try to enact some repairs to see if they can get it going again. In the meantime, they beam up the commander of the USS Constellation, Decker, aboard the Enterprise. And meanwhile, and he's kind of going through mental trauma. He's kind of having a nervous breakdown almost. And then the Enterprise comes into contact with this doomsday machine. He decides he's going to pull rank and take over the ship and be the captain and take over command and attack the doomsday device and basically get them all killed. And so there you have it. And now we're going to get to the nitty gritty, the top 10, The Cage in at number 10, the first pilot for Star Trek. There was actually 2 pilots made. The first one, The Cage, actually got rejected by the network, but they enjoyed certain aspects of it. They wanted to see more, but they wanted more action, so they gave him another chance to come up with the second pilot, which the second pilot was Where No Man Has Gone Before, and that ended up with the crew we all know and love today, William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy and DeForest Kelley. But the original, the Cage episode, the only one who survived on to the rest of the series was Leonard Nimoy, the character of Spock. That they did like that, and they kept him. And they also kept Majel Barrett, who ended up being Nurse Chapel in the original series. But at any rate, still a great episode. I think it's a great science fiction story with these super intelligent aliens that uh, they take hostage Captain Christopher Pike, played by Jeffrey Hunter. And they play with his mind, they show him all these types of weird visions, and they basically toy with him and for their own amusement. And it's just a really interesting episode. And next up, we have Spectre of the Gun from the third season of the original series. A season which had some episodes that were much maligned, and a lot of that has to do with their budget was cut in half in the third season. So they couldn't afford the elaborate sets and, be able to go to all these different adventures and go to different planets. They were stuck to the ship mainly. And also, they couldn't afford those great science fiction writers, those famous science fiction writers that they had in the first two seasons. But one that really stands out to me, they did have some great standout episodes, and Spectre of the Gun is certainly one of them. And what I love about it is that so the Enterprise approaches this planet, and the leader of the alien race warns the Enterprise, "Don't come near our planet, or you will be punished." And so they end up going forward anyway, and the Enterprise gets beamed down to the planet. And what happens is, for their punishment, they are forced to reenact the gunfight at the OK Corral, the old Western battle, with Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp and all that. So they're basically doomed to die in the battle. So they have to try and figure out a way out of it. But it's just like a great Western with the gunslinging action, and it's great. It's pretty cool in a science fiction setup. Next up is The Balance of Terror, another excellent episode with the Romulans make their debut. And the Romulan commander is played by Mark Lenard, who ends up being Spock's father later on in the series, Sarek. But here he plays the commander of this Romulan ship, the Bird of Prey, which actually has a cloaking device, which the whole ship can disappear, so it can attack someone and then disappear and fly away. And that's what they do, and they destroy one of the Starfleet ships. So the Enterprise has to come back at them, and they pull the same trick to disappear and try to run off, but the Starship Enterprise is able to track them. They figure out a way to track the ship, even though they can't see it. They can track it on their computers. So they end up getting into a real battle of wits, Captain Kirk and the Romulan commander, because they're very evenly matched and very evenly intelligent. So they each know what the other is going to do. So it's a real battle of wits. I love it. Next up is The Errand of Mercy, another episode that not a lot of people talk about, but I really enjoy it. It's one of my favorites, because Captain Kirk goes down to this planet of real peaceful civilians called Organians. So he goes down to the planet to warn these real peaceful, almost like hippie characters, where they, nothing bothers them, nothing phases them. They just go on life, and nothing bothers them. They're real peaceful. They don't interact in any type of violence whatsoever. So Captain Kirk warns them, the Klingons are coming to your planet, and they're going to take over the planet. They're going to turn you all into slaves. They're going to slaughter half of you. But they don't buy it. They're just like, oh, nothing's going to happen. We're going to be just fine. Who would attack us? We're such a peaceful race. And they just don't get it. He's like, listen, they're coming. You better do something. We're willing to help you. We're willing to save your planet and protect you. But they're like, no, we don't want you to do that. We don't want to put you in harm's way. We just don't think anything's going to happen. And that's exactly what happened. The Klingons come down, they take over the planet, they turn them all into slaves. But of course, uh, the Captain Kirk reluctantly decides they're going to protect them anyway, no matter what. So it's a really interesting episode, and I think the guy who plays the Klingon commander Kor is just outstanding and awesome. I love his performance. He's so violent and dastardly villain, you know. Love it. Next up is Journey to Babel, another excellent episode from season 2, which is a phenomenal season. And you get to meet Spock's father, again played by Mark Leonard, and he does an excellent job. And I love the dynamic between him and Spock. So Sarek hasn't talked to Spock in years because he wasn't happy with Spock running off the Starfleet when he wanted him to stay in Vulcan and be a science officer there. So that caused a lot of conflict. And also you get to meet Spock's mother, who is actually a human. So she plays to that side, the human side of Spock, and they have a lot of really interesting interactions. As she plays to his human side, and he gets that conflict. I love it. So it's an excellent episode. Next is Mirror Mirror, another great episode, a classic that a lot of people love, and it's really cool because the Enterprise gets caught up in this parallel universe, and they accidentally get beamed into the parallel universe where they run into evil versions of themselves, basically like doppelgangers. You know, you get bad Spock and bad Sulu and bad Chekhov. So and Spock's really cool, and he's got like this goatee, and he looks really evil. You know, he's like a real hard ass. This version of Spock. But it turns out in the end, Spock turns out to be their savior. He ends up being like the original Spock. And he helps save them and get back to their own universe because he knows they don't belong there. We need to help get you back to safety, back where you belong. But it's just an excellent episode, and you get to see Uhura looking all sexy, showing off her abs, and looking hot. It's a great episode. Next up is the Carbonite Maneuver. A great episode, especially for Captain Kirk. You know, you get to see really why he's the captain of the Enterprise. Because they meet up this massively powerful alien with this gigantic spaceship the size of a planet, who threatens to destroy the Enterprise if they go any further into their zone. I was like, back away or you will be destroyed in 10 minutes. And, but Kirk just thinks he's bluffing, you know, and he decides, I'm going to call your bluff. And he comes up with this idea of a substance called carbamite, and he threatens the alien leader with it. He's like, if you don't let us get through, we're going to release our carbamite on you, which will destroy your entire planet, your entire ship, and your whole race. And he buys it, you know. He buys the bluff and decides to back off. Okay, you can go about your business. And he just actually invites Kirk and crew onto his ship to show them what his life is like, and you know, kind of call a truce, so to speak. And it ends up being just a little kid. It's like a little kid calls all this havoc. It's funny. He's just this little kid who has supreme power, I guess. And next up is Space Seed, in at number 3. Of course, you gotta have that in there. The debut of Khan, the villainous Khan, who ends up being in the movie series on Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, which many consider to be the greatest Star Trek film, including myself. And here he makes his debut, the genetic Superman. Khan, who's the leader of this alien race of supermen, who ruled an entire planet on his own, this race of super strong warriors. And that's what he wants to do with the Enterprise. He wants to take over their ship and make another race of genetic supermen. And of course, Kirk is not going to have that. And they battle it out fisticuff style. Next up is another excellent episode, Amok Time, which has to be my favorite episode featuring Spock. Uh, which is a great episode because Spock gets beamed down to his planet where he is set to marry this young woman named T'Pring. And he's really freaking out about it. He doesn't know how to do. He's like, throwing shit. People are, what's wrong with you, Spock? And it turns out, he can't handle the birds and the bees, that human side of him, that sexuality. Can't quite say that, of course, but and so he invites Captain Kirk and Dr. McCoy for the ceremony, for the wedding and everything, and she ends up rejecting him. And she decides, in order to win my love, you're going to have to pass this test and take on a warrior of my choosing. So she picks, of course, Captain Kirk to defend her honor. And he decides, I'm going to do it anyway just because I want Spock to be happy. And so they have an epic battle, Kirk versus Spock with swords and everything. It's awesome. Knock down, drag out, beat him up. Classic. Next up, so in that number one is The City on the Edge of Forever, which most people pick to be as the number one episode in Star Trek history. And I agree with that, because it's an excellent, emotionally powerful. It's not as much sci-fi as some of the other episodes, but it's more emotionally grounded and more human aspects of the series, which I really like. It's more character-driven. You get to really know the characters of Kirk and Spock. So what happens is they find this portal, and at the same time, Dr. McCoy gets accidentally injects himself with this serum that drives him berserk, and he's running around all crazy. And he accidentally jumps into the time portal. He ends up into the 1940s era during the World War II. So they gotta go jump in the time portal and try and chase his ass down. And in the meantime, they meet this gorgeous young woman named Edith Keeler, played by the great Joan Collins. And Kirk really takes a liking to her, and she's this really smart, charismatic, beautiful, political figure, and she's very much involved in, I guess she plays a big part in the future of the World War II. And she plays a serious part in history of the war. And so they can't mess around with that time. If they do that, they could cause a whole catastrophic lapse in time, And who knows, they might not even end up existing, the whole Starfleet and everything, if they mess with time, So in order for that, Edith Keeler must die. She's set to die. She's set to be run over in the middle of the street by a car. But Kirk's actually fallen in love with her. For the first time, he's fallen in love with a woman, They say he's married to the Starfleet, to the ship. But he does fall in love with this woman, the first time he's ever been in love with anybody. And he really falls for her, but she has to die, as Spock so succinctly puts it. Edith Keeler must die in order for history to exist, in order for them to exist as they are. And it becomes such a powerful ending, when she walks out in the street where she's supposed to get hit by the car, and Kirk has that moment. He has an opportunity where he could have ran in and grabbed her and saved her life. But, and then Dr. McCoy catches up with them finally at the end. He's like, no, what are you doing? Don't let her go. And Captain Kirk grabs him and stops him. No. And he's crying at the same time. Such a powerful moment, And that's why City on the Edge of Forever is the number one episode of Star Trek, the original series, in my opinion. Thank you for joining me, Sean Patrick Hershen, in the Sci-Fi Corner. Tune in and blast off.